So we have here a sample problem from the ACT, example of the science test here. So let's go about the problem. Passage 1. The figure below is a pedigree that shows the inheritance of a trait G, in a family. The presence of trait G in an individual is determined entirely by gene G. Gene G has two alleles, G, which is dominant, and little g, which is recessive. Each individual represented in the pedigree was assigned a number shown below the symbol for the individual. For reference, scientists determined that the gene G genotype of individual 20 is little g, and that the gene G genotype of individual 21 is big G, little g. Based on this information, the scientists concluded that trait G is a recessive trait. So we have here 1, 2 first generation, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 second generation, third generation, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and of course fourth generation, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, let's look at our problems, what our problems would be. Problem 1. How many generations are shown in the figure? Well, generation 1 is 1, 2, generation 2 is blah blah, so we have 4 lines, 4 horizontal lines. Each horizontal line is a generation. So we can determine that since there are 4 horizontal lines of organisms, there are 4 of them, so the answer is B, 4. Based on the figure, the 2 individuals in which of the following pairs most likely have the greatest genetic similarity across their genomes? So let's look at the answers, possible answers. F, individual 3 and individual 4. So we see here individual 3 and individual 4 are mates, but we see that one has a white box and the other is a black circle. So the white and the black mean one has the genotype, the other does not. So we know that that answer is not right. G, individual 12 and individual 13. So let's see here. We see 2 white circles for individual 12, individual 13. Essentially, they are brother and sister. They share the same fact that they do not have the trait. So that must be the right answer, but let's check the other answers to make sure that G is the right answer. H, individual 16 and individual 24. So we see here individual 16, here a black square, and individual 24 a white circle. So they aren't similar in their gender, although they're similar in having the trait, so that's not the right answer either. So individual J, individual 18 and individual 21. So we see here 18 is the circle, the black circle, individual 21 is the white circle. Though they are the same shape, they do not share the same trait, so that is not the right answer either. The only right answer was G, individual 12 and individual 13. So let's go on to the next problem. 3. Suppose that individual 23 and individual 24 have 4 biological children. Based on the figure, How many of the children, if any, have trait G? So, big G, that is. Well, actually, at least we think it's. So, with trait G, I'm sorry I messed up there. So, if you are entirely black, you have trait G. So, we have here 23 recessive gene, 24 recessive gene. So, how many of the children will have the recessive gene? Well, let's take, do consider the fact that recessive gene, little g mates with little g, 23, 24. So if they have 4 children, all 4 will have the recessive gene because there is no dominant gene to to make it up. So little g is in every one of the traits. The answer is D, 4. 4. According to the figure, how many of the grandchildren of individuals 1 and individual 2, if any, have trait G? So the answers are 0, 1, 2, and 7 possible answers. So which of the answers is correct? So how many of the grandchildren of individual 1 and individual 2? So we see here that individual 1, individual 2, the grandchildren is line 3 here, since line 2 is the line 2 is the children, and then the grandchildren, next generation after that, is lines 9 through 16. So you see here three blacks and 4 whites. So, but we see that 3 blacks, but we don't have 3 as a possible answer. We have 0, 1, 2, and 7. Why is this? Well, do consider that the grandchild has to be directly related to 1 and 2. 16 is directly related to 1 and 2. That is one of the answers. And we see here that 10 is directly related to 1 and 2. But 10 mates with 9, a recessive gene holder. But 9 is not a grandchild of 1 and 2 because there is no relation between individual 9 and individuals 1 and 2. So 2 must be the correct answer. H. Let's take a look at the other side. 5. Based on the figure, it is likely that trait G is a sex-linked trait. Is it likely that trait G is a sex-linked trait? Let's go through the answers. A. Yes, because the mother with trait G always passed trait G to their sons. B. Yes, because mothers with trait G did not always pass trait G to their sons. No, because mother with trait G always passed trait G to their sons. And D. No, because mothers with trait G did not always pass trait G to their sons. Now, it is important to note that there are 2 answers that don't make any grammatical sense at all. B and C. With trait G, did not always pass trait G to their sons. Well, trait G is the dominant trait, so sorry, it's the recessive trait. With trait G, and C does not make any sense either. The answer must be D. No, because mothers with trait G did not always pass trait G to their sons. Because when you have the recessive trait, you don't always pass it to your sons. Let's look at answer 6. 6. Based on the information provided, will an individual with the gene G genome, big G, little g, have trait G? F. Yes, because trait G is a dominant trait. G. Yes, because trait G is a recessive trait. H. No, because trait G is a dominant trait. And no, because trait G is a recessive trait. Now, if you remember, the answer must be G or J, because trait G is determined to be a recessive trait as the explanation gave to us. But will they always have trait G? The answer is no, J, because the trait G is the recessive trait. Recessive trait is not always given. That you need to understand, I suppose, and that is how you might go through a science problem on the ACT test.